Welcome back to the Broncos Breakdown, second video of the day because Denver made two signings. But I still want to talk about what I originally planned on talking about this morning, which was the possibility of Denver trading up in the draft. We know Sean Payton has a history of being an aggressive GM, if you will, since that's more or less his role in a lot of ways when the draft rolls around. So with that being said, let's throw it back to old me and talk about Denver maybe moving up in the draft. So our story really begins on February 10th when Dane Brugler, who I think is one of the best NFL draft insiders, gurus, if you will, said, I expect JJ McCarthy to be drafted somewhere in the top 12 picks. Keep in mind, February 10th was pretty on the early side for the JJ McCarthy smoke, right? This is what? Is this even after the Super Bowl? I think it's right before the Super Bowl, February 10th. So this is like one of the founding fathers of J.J. McCarthy's going to go earlier than you believe. Too early to rule anything out. So let's fast forward 6 weeks later, and yesterday he tweets out, 6 weeks ago, I was told this was a hot take. Now J.J. McCarthy making it out of the top 8 feels like a long shot. The Vikings have the ammo for a trade up, but never count out Sean Payton. So let's talk about Denver and Minnesota maybe having a bit of a cold war to move up and get J.J. McCarthy. Because when we look at the NFL draft order, I think all teams in the top 3 are staying put and they're taking a quarterback. We can debate the order after Caleb Williams, but that's not really relevant to Denver. Arizona could trade back if a team really wants to get a quarterback like McCarthy at 4, but I think they're going to want a big haul because Marvin Harrison would be too tough to pass on. The Chargers are not. Let me rephrase that. Jim Harbaugh is not going to trade with the Broncos so he can face J.J. McCarthy twice a season. The Giants at 6 could be in for a surprise quarterback pick since Daniel Jones has really just always been underwhelming after his rookie season. The Titans at 7, they like Will Levis. I think they just wait for Joe Alt to fall to them. But the Falcons at 8 no longer need a quarterback after signing Kirk Cousins. So if we're looking at Denver trading up, they can't really get to 5 because the Chargers will just not make that deal with them. Maybe the Cardinals, although that's a huge jump from 12 to 4. That includes a lot of assets going over. So what could Denver offer in a trade to get up to 4 or maybe 6 or 7? Well, here are their best trade assets, in my opinion. Their first-round pick, their third-round pick, a future first, a future second, and a future first, right? They could offer their first-round pick this year and 2 future firsts to go from 12 to 4 with the Cardinals. And maybe Arizona decides we can live without Marvin Harrison and we'll take the future first. Or maybe if you wanted to hold on to some draft picks, you could include Patrick Surtain. I would not trade Patrick Surtain. Unless you are getting Patrick Surtain straight up for a top 3 pick, I'm not interested, which no team would accept that deal. But that's just how highly I value Surtain. So now let's do a dick measuring contest with the Vikings. What do they have to offer? Well, they made a trade for the Houston Texans 23rd overall pick. So right off the bat, if a team is looking to trade back and Minnesota and Denver are calling, I don't see how Denver really beats the Vikings in a bidding war, right? The Vikings can offer a team 2 first-round picks this year, and their first pick is earlier than Denver's, right? They're at 11 compared to 12. And there's no way the Vikings made that trade for a second first just to get a nice corner at 23. I don't buy that. They want to use that 11th and 23rd overall pick to package together and trade up. And if I was Minnesota, would you want to trade up to 7 with the Titans just to risk your quarterback going 6 to the Giants? That would just be an all systems failure. So they're probably looking to leapfrog the Giants knowing the Cardinals and Chargers are not going quarterback. Plus, they don't want to trade up to 7 with Tennessee or 8 with Atlanta and then have another team leapfrog them. So I think if I'm Minnesota, it is trade for 4 or 5 at least, knowing no one could come in front of you and take the quarterback that you just traded up to get, which just makes it that much tougher for Denver to move up. So I don't see a clear path or an easy path unless the Vikings just drop out of the race out of nowhere. Now, we've spent all this time talking about trading up. We should probably talk about who are they going to trade up for. there's only one guy. It's JJ McCarthy. I don't think we're going to see Drake May or Jaden Daniels fall out of the top 3. So then it just becomes, is the JJ McCarthy smoke real, or is it just that smoke? I personally, I would not trade up for JJ McCarthy, and it's for 2 reasons. One, just as a prospect, I'm not sold on him being a guy worth giving up future assets to trade up for, right? It would be one thing if you were already in that spot like New York, and sure, you don't want to waste a 6 overall pick, but if it doesn't work out, you're not out future first rounders. And that's part 2 of this, right? I'm not sold on JJ just as a prospect, and because of that, I'm not willing to sign off on giving up future assets to maybe put yourself into a deeper hole, right? Think about what Denver's had to do just try and climb out of the hole, in which they're not out of, by the way, after giving up all those picks for Russell Wilson. You want to make not the same level of trade, but 75%, 60% of that trade? And if it doesn't work out, which I know I'm living a little bit in fear here, man, you're already behind the 8 ball a few years because of the Rush trade. Now you're talking about really being in the trenches for 5-6 years, unless you hit on a Hail Mary quarterback in day 3. I just think this is not the time for Denver to make a huge move up for a quarterback. Call me, soft. I think staying put would be a much better plan, or just trading back, right? This team still has a lot of needs elsewhere on this roster. So I would explore trading back. Now, you always need to find someone to trade with, but I was looking at the teams picking behind Denver, and you can make some arguments for any one of those teams moving up. When the draft rolls around, there's always surprise teams that make a call and move up that people didn't have pegged. But what about the Eagles? Howie Roseman has always been an aggressive GM. He feels like he has a win-now roster. So picking at 22, he's got 2 second-rounders. He may be very happy with moving on from his earliest second-round pick, a future 4th, to jump up at 12 and address whatever big need Philadelphia has at the time. And if the Broncos were to make this trade with Philly, look at the potential draft picks they could have for this year and the future. They'd have a 1st at 22, a 2nd at pick 50, which they could use on a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix that may not be there at their current 3rd-round pick. They have a 4th. They have 3 5th-round picks and 2 6th after making that Jerry Jeudy trade. And then they would go into 2025 with 7 picks. Keep in mind they are out of 5th because of the Bradley Chubb trade, and I think the Albert O trade has played a factor into it. But they could add an early day 3 pick. So we're talking moving back 10 spots and picking up a 50th overall pick and an early day 3 pick in 2025. I looked at the trade value chart. This would technically be a slight overpay by the Philadelphia Eagles just to go from 22 to 12. So what do you guys think? Would you trade up or would you trade down? I'm very open to trading back, getting a 2nd, if it's not a 3rd-round pick or day 3 pick this year. I know we all want to just have more picks right now, but going into 2025, when I don't think 2024 is that great of a draft, to be honest with you guys, outside of quarterbacks and wide receivers and offensive tackles, I think maybe having a few extra picks next year will definitely pay off in the long run. All right, that will do it for us on this edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all later.